1:31, the April 19th, 2010 meeting of the Oklahoma City Traffic Commission is called to order. Commissioner Clayton, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Let us bow our heads in the attitude of prayer. Eternal source of our being and sustainer of our infinite hopes and dreams, we come this afternoon, thank you for the blessing that you have bestowed upon us, and let us ever be mindful that you are the source of all our needs. We pray that everything that we do this afternoon will be provided by the truth. We pray that each individual is seated here in this courtroom, by all means, let your faith and all the opportunities shine on us. This we pray. Amen. Amen.
I would like to welcome Jim Witcher, the newest commissioner to the representing Ward 1. Thank you. Jim Witcher. Dan Martin. Here. Walt Kula.
Here, sir.
Harvey Harris.
Here.
Ward 6 is vacant at this time. Jolene Pittman.
Present.
Jim May.
Here.
I'm sorry, John May.
Yeah, that's right. Some call me Jim once in a while.
Milford J. Clayton. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 15th meeting?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by Commissioner Harris, seconded by Commissioner Clayton, to approve the minutes of the March 15th meeting. Could I have your votes, please? Approved unanimously. Thank you. Item 3 is the quarterly report on the licensed taxi and wrecker services by the Oklahoma City Police Department.
Sergeant William Ricketts, Oklahoma City Police Department. The first quarter of 2010, our activity was as taxis. There were 44 new driver permits issued, 34 renewals, 2 driver transfers. There were 18 field inspections with 1 failure. There were 10 complaints investigated with 11 enforcement actions taken. Correction, this can be 34 field inspections with 18 regular inspections. Limos, there were 2 inspections conducted. There was no citations issued. There were 2 enforcement actions taken with 2 complaints. For all other activity, there were 27 new permits issued, 29 renewals, 3 transfers, 5 vehicles inspected, and 3 complaints worked, with 3 enforcement actions.
Any of the commissioners have comments or questions?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
As far as enforcement, complaints, was there, were they against both the current cab companies?
There were, on the complaints, there were 10 complaints investigated. I don't have which companies they were, but I would assume it was on each company.
What's the most common complaint? Is there one?
No, not really. It's usually it could be complaint on one driver against another driver over whether it be cutting in line or things of that nature.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Oh, okay. That'll work. All right.
Further comments or questions? Thank you, officer.
Thank you.
Item number 4 is the consent docket. Any of the commissioners have comments or questions on the consent docket?
Yes, sir. I'd like to just mention that on 4A, on their application, they're mentioning cost per mile that in the staff report that the cost per mile does not apply to them, only the set fees that they're set up. I'd just like to make that clear, that in their application it's per mile, but we're not saying that we're going to say yes to that.
Thank you.
I have one question. In looking at the name of the company, ICAB LLC, it would appear that instead of the limousine service, this is a cab company, and I was wondering about that name of the company. On 4A, could we remove that from the consent docket? And would we put it in the
Yes.
regular for consideration?
I second that.
I have a motion and I have a second to remove item 4A from the consent docket and put it under the items for individual consideration. It will be the first item that we consider under individual consideration. Could I have your votes, please?
I have one other thing, Mr. Chair.
This is on
this item.
On this item. Could I have your votes, please? Okay. Item 4A will be removed from the consent docket and placed on the items for individual consideration. Other comment? If there's anyone wishing to speak before the commission, if you haven't already filled out one of these blue forms, please see Cherry and she'll get you fixed up with that.
Mr. Chairman, is there anything on anyone wanting to speak on items 4F and G?
I'm getting ready to call for that. Is there anyone wishing to speak on items 4F and G individually?
Then I'd like to speak on them, since I live in the neighborhood, and I would
Okay.
have some. Want me to go down here to speak, or from my?
No, from it there. Right there would be fine.
These came about because back in November of last year, I'd met with this homeowners association talking about the fact that in this area there exists a swimming pool that the homeowners association not only owns but runs. And because of that, there's parking on both sides of the street, 35 miles per hour, and there's lots of kids coming and going, getting out of vehicles, going across the street in some cases just walking into the street. And because of that, I had asked them to consider making some changes there, such as no parking on that south side, and then lowering the speed limit, because it is 35, where it's actually a neighborhood area, and most of those are at 25. So Pat Chenault has carried the water on this one. I give her all the credit on it, but she got her neighborhood association behind this, got the name signed, and brought the information to Stuart so that it could be considered here today. And I just thought I'd give you a little bit more history of what was going on here besides just lowering the speed limit on Part F, and not speed limit, but the no parking on Part F, and the speed limit on G because of that issue of children in the area, and it's a concentration of children. So, and there's a safety issue there. Keep in mind, there's only two ways into that part of the neighborhood, and this is one of the two ways. So it's not like people are going to stop going the way they normally do out of habit and detour about a half mile around just to get back in their neighborhood. It's just, people are creatures of habit, and so that this is, in my estimation, F and G are very good moves and should improve the level of safety in that area. Thank you. I'd also mention in voting I will recuse myself on those two items since it has a personal effect in the aspect that I live in that neighborhood.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on items 4B, C, D, E, F, or G? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent docket and remember that item A has been removed.
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent docket minus 4A, which includes 4B, C, D, E, F, and G.
I have a motion to approve the consent docket minus A by Commissioner Kula, seconded by Commissioner Clayton. Have your votes, please. Approved. This takes us to the items for individual consideration. The first one will be the former item 4A. The applicant is Ignacio Espinoza, doing business as ICAB LLC, 1612 Northwest 13th Street, Oklahoma City. The request is to consider an application from ICAB LLC for a certificate of public conveyance and necessity to operate 15 vehicles in limousine service. Yes. Ignacio Espinoza. If you would state your name and address, please, for the record.
It's Ignacio Espinoza, address 1612 Northwest 13th Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73106. And the reason why I decided to call it ICAB, because I came up with a lot of names. I narrowed it down to ICAB with friends and family. I thought it was short, simple, catchy, and easy to market. The car that I'll be using, it won't be marked. It won't have any markings on it. It won't have to say ICAB or anything. The reason why I picked $250 a mile was because I thought I had to break down the cost by mile. But if that's not the case, it's just $45 an hour. And the service that I'm offering to the city is an upscale transportation for individuals. And that's it.
Any of the commissioners have questions?
Yes, I'd like to ask why you came up with 15 vehicles is what you think your fleet might get to.
Okay. My understanding is that if I were to just put one and, let's say, 2 months from now I wanted to add another vehicle, I have to go through the same process again. To avoid that, they said to put more than what you have right now or what you think you might have.
Right.
And so I thought 15 would be reasonable. Not that I think that will ever reach 15 vehicles, but just...
So what size are you thinking your fleet may get to in the near future, long-term plan that you have in mind?
Honestly, maybe about 4 to 6 cars.
4 to 6 cars, and about how long to get there?
2 years, maybe 2 to 3 years.
Okay, very good. All right, thanks, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Just a minute. On the ICAB, will you be listing that in local telephone directories and so forth as a cab company?
No. See, if you go in the telephone book, you go on taxis, you will see the taxi companies.
Right.
I'll be listed in the limousine companies, and that's it. Yeah.
And you did say you would not have this on your vehicle.
No. I wanted to keep the vehicle without markings to keep it more executive type style. That's what I like.
It still signifies that you are a cab company, though. That's,
Well, also,
and I do have a problem with that.
okay. Well, also, there's a web browser called iCab. There's a limousine company in Canada called iCab. If you put iCab in the dictionary, you won't pull no results. A taxi company, to me, in my opinion, or if you look it up, it's a taxi company, not a cab company.
Yeah.
I don't mean to confuse the customers that it's a taxi. I want to, it is a limousine company. It's a livery service. I won't have a meter in it. I won't charge per mile, but like I said, I thought I had to break down the price per mile. That's why I bid in the application $250 a mile. Okay.
So, sir, it is clear that the per mile doesn't apply?
Yes, yeah,
Right.
45.
Okay. All right, very good.
Other questions or comments of Mr. Espinoza? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
T. Valencia. Please state your name and address.
Tawana Valencia, 3511 Charleston Road, Norman, Oklahoma. I'm with A1 Taxi. As you all know, I'm a firm supporter of more taxi companies in the area. I mean, I really want that. But I also know that we have a lot of confusion in Oklahoma City right now with blue vans riding taxi van on the side of their cars. We've had customers that rode with us after riding with them and were just irate because we, of course, cost more than what the shuttle does. But since it says taxi van, they don't understand that. They just see taxi. Well, I don't know how you plan to advertise, because you're going to have to advertise somewhere to get business. But when they see cab, they're going to be calling, expecting to get a cab, not a limo, at limo prices. I believe whatever it is, it needs to be called what it is. If it's a taxi, it's a taxi. If it's a limo, it's a limo. If it's a shuttle, it's a shuttle. You know, because it's just causing too much confusion. I just believe we need to get these things cleared up for the customers of Oklahoma City as well. And I do have a picture, if you wanted to see it, of the taxivan.com on the side of the blue vans, something we've been fighting with and struggling with for a long time. When you advertise, and you're going to have to advertise, that's going to go under taxi if you're not listed as a limo. You've got to be listed as a limo, and I think that's what it needs to be called. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Valencia. Billy Osborne.
Billy Osborne, 3511 Charleston Road, A1 Taxi. We really don't have a problem with Mr. Espinosa's efforts, and we're glad to see a new transportation company in Oklahoma City. Our concerns lie with his charging. How is he going to be charged, and how is he going to be licensed? I think from his statement of wanting an exception for a mileage charge, a per mile charge, that it's quite clear that what he's really seeking is a taxi license. I think what we need to do is expedite what we're going through as far as getting the licensing of taxis easier in Oklahoma City. I think Mr. Espinosa probably would have opened a taxi company had it been easy enough to open a taxi company. It's a lot more simpler for him to open a limousine company. And again, as Ms. Valencia stated, I'd like to pass this around. This is a source of constant confusion to the public. I have continually had passengers in my taxi screaming at me because my rate is higher, and I've asked them, what did you ride in? And they told me they rode in a blue taxi, which I've told them there's not a blue taxi in Oklahoma City. I'd like to pass this around if it's okay.
Certainly.
I have a comment. I don't know how to read the subsections. It's 3.4 in Article 1 in general. It refers to misleading advertising. It states quite specifically that there no advertising shall be misrepresentation or statement of fact which is untrue, deceptive, or misleading in any way, shape, or form. I think that sign needs to be removed from the blue vans. That's not what we're here for, though. My fear is Mr. Espinosa will wind up with a large sign on the side of his limo that says ICAB, and I won't know whether I'm getting in a taxi or a limo. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for Mr. Osborne? Comments?
Yes, if I could ask Mr. Chai and the staff if we can be concerned about that issue when we receive these things.
Let me ask for staff's report on this item first, please.
Thank you.
Okay, well, this is a fairly straightforward application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity. The only thing that's out of the ordinary in this particular application, outside of the fact that the rate schedule's been clarified as being at a rate of $45 an hour, I believe, the only difference is that, well, quite literally, it's just in the name of the company. with a descriptive term like ICAB. It's one of the, and I'd visited with the applicant ahead of the meeting just to let him know that there might be some potential discussion on calling the company what he's proposing to call it, which is ICAB, as opposed to another, any other corporate name. But beyond that, his application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity is in order.
Yes.
Yes,
Commissioner Kula.
yeah, I'd like to ask, is it a concern of our traffic commission to the name of a company, especially when there's 3 different categories that a different company could come in, whether it be taxi, van, or limo, if a name of the company says one of the 3 categories compared to the category that they're actually going into, is that a concern of ours? Ma'am.
I would, go ahead.
I was about to say, based on the photograph of that van that was just passed around, I would probably say that, a name could cause some confusion. And, you might want to address the applicant, see if he might reconsider a different name for his company.
Along those same lines, I would ask legal if there are any ramifications for us requesting that he change his name.
I can do some research, but as far as I know, there are no ordinances that address the requirements for a name for companies. So if you want to look at amending the ordinances to reflect that, but as long as his application is in order and he's not charging by the mile, he is not a taxi. He's not on the taxi meter, so he would fall under the ordinance.
Thank you. Further,
There is a record service called Car Cab. I mean, not that you're not going to find it under taxis. You're going to find it under record service.
further comments by, actually, before we consider this, I need a motion to approve. Oh, I'm sorry, I need a motion.
There you go. So I'd like to make a motion to approve previous 4A as written and as modified to the no cost per mile, but to the straight hourly fee.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Kula, seconded by Commissioner Pittman, to approve item 4A. Is there further discussion?
Yes, I would like to see us look at the terminology and have something in a future meeting that will clarify the difference between limo and cab company. And because it could be misleading. And, so I'd like to recommend that we look at that and have something back to us.
Yes, we're the taxi and limo committee is meeting, and this could be included in part of the Chapter 56 oversight that we're seeing. We'll be having a meeting on that this afternoon, and then at that time we'll bring that to the trade and let them review that as well. So I think we're going to cover that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that I'm in favor of the application, except for the fact that ICAB does potentially misrepresent that this is a limousine service. It's by using ICAB itself. You have to explain it. We've got, under municipal code, our own definitions of what a cab is, what a limo is, what a shuttle is. So I guess what I'd like to come out of this is say that if it's approved, it would be subject to whatever the findings of that committee are for the purposes of clarification of cabs, shuttles, and limousines. So we don't put it in under the wire and then say we got to live with this now. We say it's subject to them.
Mr. Espinoza, could you come back to the podium, please? Would you be opposed to changing your name as submitted?
Stuart, he did recommend for me to change it to avoid this problem. I was going to do it, but if I do it, I have to pay like $400 or $500 additional for another, the secretary seal. I had to pay 100 and something that, the transportation thing. That, and also, I believe that, you know, there was no restrictions of what you can call a company as long as I didn't call it a taxi. So I figured, well, let's see what happens. And if you guys don't approve me, I'll just come back next time and with a different name. But if you do approve me, I'll make sure that I will not advertise as a taxi company. I will not put it on the side of the car. That's all I can say.
Thank you. I appreciate your explanation. Any further comments or discussion? I have a motion by Commissioner Kula, seconded by Commissioner Pittman, to approve item 4A. Could I have your votes, please? Approved. Thank you. Item 5A, this is moving on to the regular items for individual consideration. Albert Ryder, 2351 Corvette Drive, Norman, Oklahoma, 73026. The request is to consider the removal of the north and southbound stop signs on South Harrow Road at Southeast 119th Street. Albert Ryder.
Albert Ryder. My address is 2351 Corvette Drive, Norman, Oklahoma. The stop sign was put in back in last June. There was a request by, I think it was an individual, to put that sign in there. Since the stop sign's been up, it's become a big safety hazard. There's been more accidents in the last 9 months than I could ever recall. I don't know how many's been reported, but there is numerous times that there's busted glass on the road, skid marks, all kinds of stuff. There's been a couple of serious wrecks, and I don't recall of any accidents there ever before, whether there was any, let alone anything serious. There's not enough traffic on the cross streets. A good 90% of the time when you come to that intersection, the cross streets are empty. 119th is empty. There's nobody there. During the snow season, the east side of Oklahoma City is the last place that gets sand and graded. That hill and the hill on 134th Street are two of the worst hills on here in Newalla for getting snow and ice. If you come to a slow down or a stop, you're going to end up, if you don't have four-wheel drive, somebody's going to push you up the hill. I know it's only a couple of days, after about 2 days in Oklahoma, snow's pretty well cleared off where they eventually get to us, but it's a big issue. It slows the flow of traffic down tremendously on here in Newalla. It's a main thoroughfare between I-40 and Highway 9. It's an 11-mile stretch. There's been a couple of stop signs added that were needed, and then there's a couple there that's not necessary at all. Fuel loss, that's supposed to be a big deal and concern with the government. There's thousands of gallons of fuel lost because you have to shut down from a flow of 55 miles an hour down to a stop, accelerate. If you're going north uphill, there's a lot of semis travel this road. You know, there's a big waste of fuel because there's a new stop sign there. The field of sight, I went and measured it yesterday. I know there's some statistics in when this was voted on, but when I measured it off, I don't know exactly what at what point, if it's 2 foot from the ground, 5 foot from the ground, but I measured 812 feet from the center of the intersection to the top of the hill where you would see a car's headlights. Not when you first see the windshield, but by the time you've seen the headlights and the bumper, is 812 feet. And that's if you're setting on the eastbound traffic turning to go uphill. Back to the south, you've got almost 3/4 of a mile field of sight. It's plenty of room. The acceleration going north, if you're pulling out, you've got plenty of time to see if anyone is coming. So to turn and go up there, the field of sight is the concern of crossing one lane of traffic. The turning and going south, you're going downhill. Acceleration shouldn't be no problem to get up to the speed of traffic. I spoke to Mr. Akula the other day, and he said that the average speed on, I think 85% of the average speed out there was 64 miles an hour. What most of the people in the community would have much rather seen, instead of a stop sign, is some police enforcement to the east side of Oklahoma City. It's a neglected area. You're going to wait an hour, hour and a half to get any response from Oklahoma City police out there. A whole lot longer if you're waiting on an ambulance. You know, there's several police officers live within a 2 or 3 mile radius of here. Once a week, if they went to work 30 minutes later or came home 30 minutes later and patrolled the road, the community would much rather see some police out there than a stop sign because they're too lazy to come out and patrol the road. That's what it amounts to, is we never see no police out there. The Cleveland County sheriffs are out there quite a bit, but it's Oklahoma City's city limits. They're the ones that we should be seeing out there. The more police you see, the less crime you have, the less traffic violations, the less accidents, because all they have to do is have a presence there. They don't even have to be enforcing anything. But I'd request, and according to the ordinance and stuff, there wasn't a need for signatures. I know I could have got plenty of signatures, but the closest house to here is about 600 feet from this intersection. The rest of them are over a quarter mile away. So the part for the having the petition didn't apply. I'm sure the people on the east and west side traffic, you know, I'm sure they appreciate having a stop sign there. But for the rest of us and most of the flow of traffic, it's a great inconvenience. It's a safety hazard. It's a loss of fuel, all kinds of things against it. And I would wish the City Council would consider removing the stop sign.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder.
Danny.
Cheryl Moses.
Cheryl Moses. I live at 20,800 Triple C Lane, McLeod, Oklahoma, but it is Oklahoma City. And I was the one that initially requested this stop sign so we could slow down the traffic on Harrow Road Raceway, because there was a stretch in there that people didn't slow down. They didn't look over the hill. There was a lot more wrecks before the stop sign. Now that people have gotten used to the stop sign, you know, things have flowed great, I think, and I drive it every day. The people that live around there have better access getting out of their driveways. You know, for me, it's just 100% better out there. Fuel cost, it happens. I can't address that. I don't know what to tell you unless you're speeding through there. But, you know, I asked for it for a reason. I think it's been very beneficial to the neighborhood out there. I just ask we keep it.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
I have staff review, please.
Okay, you've got the comments in the report before you. Based on the posted 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, staff can't recommend approval of the request due to the inadequate decision sight distance at the intersection for drivers looking north on South Harrow Road from Southeast 119th Street. In order for this location to pass the city's sight distance requirements, the speed limit on Harrow Road would have to be lowered to 45 miles an hour.
Do I have a motion for 5A?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion that we disapprove the request of disapprove the request of removal of the north and southbound stop signs on South Harrow Road at Southeast 119th Street.
Second.
I have a motion to disapprove the removal of the stop sign as mentioned on 5A by Commissioner Kula, seconded by Commissioner May. Could I have further discussion, please?
Yes, sir. I'd like to throw out there that all these issues were talked about prior to prior to approving the four-way stop. When it came down to the final look, it all came down to the sight distance for the speed, which is posted at 55, and the concern that the 85 percentile is 64 miles per hour, which of course would increase that sight distance even worse. So after all the talk, and as you brought up, sir, all the talk about it's a major road going north-south in that area, the side streets don't have the throughput that's required for a four-way stop. Those were all valid points, and they were all talked about at length. But because of the sight distance issue, we had to go with this fix, if you want to call it that. So I just wanted to throw that out, that it was talked about at length when this first came up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Further comments or questions? I have a motion to disapprove the request to remove the stop sign. Can I have your votes, please?
That's denial. We're denying his request.
It is to deny, that's correct, the removal of the stop sign. Approved unanimously. Item 5B, the applicant is the Oklahoma City Police Department, 701 Colcord Drive, Oklahoma City. The request is to consider establishing no parking anytime restrictions both sides of the following Interstate 35 service roads as requested by the Oklahoma City PD. First is the East Service Road, Northeast Grand Boulevard between Northeast 10th Street and Northeast 16th Street, and 2, the West Service Road between East Britain Road and East Hefner Road. There's no one here to speak on this item, so I would ask for staff summary, please.
Okay, you've got the summary in front of you. Staff supports the police department's request for parking restrictions along the I-35 service roads. You'll note in the last paragraph of the report that staff is requesting direction from the Commission with respect to developing an ordinance that would enable staff to administratively post parking restrictions along streets bearing an arterial or higher functional classification just on an as-needed basis. Staff will model the proposed ordinance after Oklahoma State Statute 4711-1004. Staff recommends approval of the request as submitted.
I so move.
I have a motion by Commissioner May and a second by Commissioner Clayton to approve item 5B. Could I have your votes, please? Approved unanimously. I would also ask that staff bring us something to the next meeting for the motion, or for the approval to apply the signage that you've asked for.
All right, thank you. We will.
That takes us to item 6, comments from citizens. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the Commission? Traffic Management Division.
We have no further reports for this meeting.
Legal? OCPD? Individual reports from commissioners. Welcome aboard, Commissioner Witcher.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to doing this.
Good to have you. Commissioner Martin?
No report.
Commissioner Kula?
Yes, if I could ask for some extra law enforcement review out on Harrow Road there by the 119th, bringing back up that 85 percentile, 64 miles an hour out on Harrow Road there by 119th. Maybe every once in a while you can get out there and take a look.
Yeah, we can take a look at it, but my understanding that the stop signs may have taken care of the issue, but we'll give it another look.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Clayton? Commissioner Harris?
Nothing.
Commissioner Pittman? Commissioner John May?
Yes, John's got a comment. It has to do with, I know we had a memorial service today, the 15th anniversary of mirror bombing, but keep in mind that tomorrow starts the Arts Festival, which brings a lot of local artists to our community and lots of folks down there. It's a good time to be taking a look at what our local artists are doing and how they improve our community. Thank you.
With that, I would entertain a